Welcome to the Saatvik Podcast. I'm Himanshu Singhal, and this time we have a very special guest with us. We are currently at the Mercom India Renewables Summit 2025, and I have with me Mr. Raj Prabhu, co-founder and MD of Mercom. Raj, thank you so much for joining us today on Saatvik Podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure having you on the show. Raj, while everyone knows you already in the industry, your name needs no introduction. I would still, for the benefit of the viewers who are probably watching this podcast and listening into you for the first time, for the benefit of those viewers, would also request you to talk a little bit about yourself as well as Mercom on the kind of work that you guys are doing and specifically the initiatives that you've taken so far to create such a big name in the industry.
Yeah. So I started Mercom in 2009. I'm talking about Mercom India. Mercom's parent company, Mercom Capital Group, was founded in 2007 in the US. Our company was started to coincide with the National Solar Mission because renewables was something that we were looking as the next big thing. And as soon as the policy was announced, we took a foray into this market. We started very small, and it was basically me and my co-founder, and I started writing small blogs about Indian solar sector, which quickly caught on. And pretty soon I was writing for opinion pieces for media. And slowly I ended up being considered as one of those that could influence the markets. So we decided to, grow along with the market, and I think we started our news division around 2017. But basically before that, it was all we were into basic research on the Indian solar industry. Since we've been from the beginning, when in 2009, where Indian solar installations were 6 megawatt only, right? A 6 megawatt gets installed in a minute in India right now. Right now we're installing about 120 gigawatts. So our research is comprehensive. Our databases are comprehensive because we literally have tracked every single project that's in India from 2009 onwards, right? So that has given us a big advantage. And I've seen the cycles since 2009. Policies come, policies get changed, companies come, companies go. It's given a really good perspective for me. And, later on, we've added events to our portfolio of products. We've grown with the industry, and hopefully we'll continue to grow as the industry grows.
Right. Raj, which global policies do you believe are driving the next phase of solar adoption worldwide and in India? Okay.
There is, I wouldn't say global, because all policies are local to that particular country. India has its own set of policies, and as we know, these are set targets and goals for 2030 that the whole industry is trying to meet. That's driving the Indian solar sector. US has its own policies, but we don't have targets or goals over there, right? And that whole policy structure recently changed with the new administration coming. Is it driving renewables in US? I don't know. And we're in a tough place right now in terms of policy. But you go to Europe, very friendly towards renewable energy, even though they're, it's EU, not one country. Germany has always been a leader. Spain's been doing solar for a long time. So individually, and China, of course, is a big one, and which installs more than all countries put together, right? So every country understands the importance of solar. Every country understands that coal and fossil fuels are a thing of the past, and they want to be a leader in that particular market. So that broader set of goals is what is driving solar all over the world.
And what lessons do you think India can draw from other countries when it comes to implementing them?
Right. So first thing is be bold and move fast, right? India kind of like sets policies after they see those policies set in another country or a region, right? And the second thing is make sure the implementation. Implementation is everything. Execution is everything, right? Anybody can set a target or a goal. That has been a little weaker, so we could implement better. But more than anything else, policy consistency is really, really important. If there's one, complaint against India is from the investor perspective, global perspective, is we don't know what policies are going to change when. So over the last 2 years, I see improvement compared to 10, 12 years ago. But it could be better. We need, like for example, we have a ALMM policy in place. There's one coming up for cells. We still don't know what might happen towards the end, right? Take out all this uncertainty out of the market and just be very clear and think through a policy, set it and leave it. I think that's going to help India a lot in terms of policies.
So Raj, the market is really scaling up with new solar businesses coming up in the Indian solar industry. What do you think is the likely impact of this on the existing and the new set of B2B customers for these companies?
It's only positive, right? So I think we at Mercom have been really promoting a set of events where we're actually going and talking to customers. When I say customers, it's industries and hotels and restaurants, people who really want to install solar, and the enthusiasm is really high. But I can see that there is a little bit of lack of knowledge, even though they're business owners. We could do a better job, our companies could do a better job of going and talking to them. They all are interested. See, now it's not just economics, right? Everyone wants to replace a genset right now. Nobody wants to use a diesel generator anymore. Plus, for a lot of these companies that are exporting, they all have a requirement. They have these certifications, green certifications they have to comply, especially if they're exporting to Europe and whatnot. They want to make sure their power is generated from solar or wind or cleaner energy sources. That much they understand. So now I think it's for our industry to connect with the B2B customers. I understand this PM Surrogate program is more of a B2C, right? And reach these industries and educate them a little bit more and get them into the pod and get them acclimated to renewable energy and solar. So it's very positive that what's going on a B2B level, but more engagement is needed. That's currently missing a little bit, I feel like.
Let's shift the focus to the US market. The Trump administration's recent big beautiful bill and related policy shifts are reshaping the American renewable energy incentives and also the trade dynamics alongside everything else. How do you see these changes impacting the Indian solar developers and also the exporters?
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be a lot of impact on project developers, but huge impact on manufacturers, right? So the new bill that passed last month or a few weeks ago is not as bad as we thought, because we were hoping for the worst case scenario, but it's still pretty bad, right? Solar projects in US have to now, their incentives are going to end earlier than expected. Energy storage was the only one that made it through this process without any issues. So that's good for them. So now how does that impact the rest of the world? Everybody knows in our industry that the most profits in the industry right now, if you're exporting, is in the US markets. Everyone wants to be there because they can make the most amount of money. Now, what happens if your company is a manufacturer and you were betting on the US market for growth? That's not a good idea anymore, at least for the next 3.5 years. So just to make it clear, this is a law. So now if in 3.5 years, the administration changes, if it shifts from Republican to Democrat, even if Democrats are favorable, unless they have all three parts of the government, right? The Congress, the Senate, and presidency, it's difficult to change the law. So this could be, kind of semi-permanent, or they may come up with some other new policy. But for the next 3.5 years, it's going to be tough for exporters, and they can look at other options, which are not many out there. Africa, Middle East has a lot of announcements, but you're also seeing a lot of Chinese manufacturing announcement in Africa, in Middle East. So the Indian companies are going to be directly competing with them. So at this point, it was very disappointing news for India, what happened in the US. And a lot of focus has to be the domestic markets. So that is why this long-term goal thing I've been talking about is very, very important. And they need to set up demand generation goals beyond what we have right now. Where is all this manufacturing going to go? It has to stay in India. So for that to happen, we need robust demand so manufacturers can constantly be selling, because they don't have an export market as of now, at least. But I don't want to be too quick to dismiss anything. This was just an announcement that came in last week. Nothing is still concrete. They're going to go through these investigations. That'll take a year or so. But currently, I don't think a lot of manufacturers should be betting on the U.S. market for growth.
And if you further dig deep and we look at U.S. measures like Section 201 tariffs, the reciprocal tax, of course, the big beautiful bill that we mentioned, and of course, new petitions for anti-dumping duties.
Right.
How do you see these trade actions influencing, like you rightly said, not only the exporter, but also the global supply chains? And it's not only about India, but globally as well.
Right. So the trade policy right now of India and US, believe it or not, is very similar. So India wants Make in India. Everything has to be domestic. So is US. US has always been a free market, all right? So it is a little bit shocking for the rest of the world that now we are insisting that, no, everything has to be made domestically as well. But we should not be surprised, because that's what, India is doing and some of the other countries are doing, right? But implication is everybody else right now is also looking at protecting their own domestic markets, right? This kind of started, I think, in the US after COVID. Once COVID happened, we realized in the US that certain products could be shut down. So medicine was one, certain other very important, imports that we were basically depending on India, even China. They were shut down for a little while, pharmaceutical, industry, which made the government there start thinking, we have to have a resilient domestic supply chain, because something like this happens, we are so dependent on others that we cannot sustain, right? It started, around there, and then now it's kind of seeped into all other industries. Renewables is not the only one, but since we are in the industry, we see it very closely. But that's been a theme of U.S. politics, even actually bipartisan. Both parties now want to make sure all the critical elements are made in the U.S., right? So going forward, how does this affect the rest of the world? I mean, until the Trump administration is in place, 3.5 years, I see this theme continuing. And hopefully after that, maybe they soften that a little bit. And there's a little bit of cooperation from not just U.S., others as well. Because you don't want U.S. pointing fingers at India going, hey, look, your companies can export to a solar project in the U.S., but we can't do that, So it needs, I think, multiple countries to come together, not just U.S. or India, to make this, again, something that's globally palatable and then, increase cooperation around trade.
Sure. And shifting focus back to India, now with India targeting close to about 500 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2030, do you see this trajectory as sustainable or not?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's very doable. It was 12 months ago, it was a little bit challenging. Now we have seen 25 gigawatts being installed in India last year. So we know the market can handle 25. Can it handle, right now, based on the current pace, we need about 30 gigawatts or so per year to meet that target. So if we can do 25, 30 shouldn't be that hard. If anything, the problem might be around supply a little bit to make sure that we're not short of any supply, models or cells or whatnot. And also making sure the land availability problem is, taken care of somewhere. More worried about the grid side of things, right? So another theme we were pushing yesterday was energy storage. Energy storage needs to become the next big thing in India, because without energy storage, grid integration is going to be a problem. Grid stability is going to be a problem. We've already seen that in Germany and Europe. We are seeing that in California. Renewables, obviously solar and wind are intermittent, right? So to handle the solar generation is 9, 10 in the morning till, 6 o'clock in the evening or so, right? What do we do after, right? So we have to bring energy storage into play. So if we remove these bottlenecks, supply bottleneck, land issues, grid, I don't see why we can't hit 30 gigawatt a year.
Right. And also looking further ahead, what renewable capacity targets should we set for 2040 to stay aligned with the net zero 2070 commitments?
So looking at it very analytically, if we can install, I think the government right now has a program where government agencies have to tender about 40 gigawatts of solar, I think, and then another wind or so.
No.
So if we can do 40, add another 10, 50 or so, 10 years, that's 500 already, right? I think that's very doable, right? So I think a goal of around 750 gigawatts to 1,000 gigawatts, which is a terawatt, is what we should be looking between 2030 and 2040. That would give the market a nice, goal to work towards, something that is doable, and the investment community can, confidently invest in India because they have this long-term large market that they can tap into.
And what policy tweaks would you like to see to help the Indian manufacturers reach global export sector?
Yeah. That's very challenging because it's kind of not up to India because they don't control what happens in the US, for example, right? They can support local manufacturing here, but it's what the trade policy that's going to end up being in US or Europe or whatnot, right? Right now, that is not looking great, but you never know. Locally, what the government here can do is make sure the Indian manufacturers take away all the impediments,
right.
Make it very easy, cut the bureaucracy, make sure they got good quality power supply, right? Land is an issue, make sure they have land, water. So the infrastructure availability for manufacturers is something that the government could make it easy and quick, so that manufacturers go out there and can expand and, as soon as they can. And also help on the R&D side a little bit. I understand government can only do so much, but at least help, a little bit of investment into R&D ecosystem that, you know what I'm saying? We're not just depending on importing certain components, but actually we are coming up with new technologies here.
And sticking with India, now India is positioning itself as a global clean energy leader.
Yeah.
Now, in your view, how can solar power truly become the backbone of building Bharat? Not just powering cities, but also reaching villages, MSMEs, and also agriculture.
Okay. So India is already number 3 in the world. It's the third largest market for solar behind China and the US. So we're already in the, on the top, right? Again, going back to the solar water heater example. So solar water heater in India is so common. So one of my, goals is to see that happening with solar power, right? If customers already know what a solar water is, few more panels generate power out of it. So if we can make it, if the policy, like PM Surya Ghar is already helping, I think it's one of the best in terms of policies that's been around in India, because the impact has been so immediate. Within 1 year, I don't exactly have the number, the installations are huge. They've overtaken CNI installations by a large margin. And the minister, for MNRA, Mr. Prahlad Joshi was saying yesterday, 58 plus lakh applications. I mean, huge demand, right? So if we can meet this pent-up demand and we start seeing, solar on rooftop of every other house, I don't see why we can't make this happen. I think solar is already the backbones, and it's going to be more so in the near future.
And also India's module manufacturing base is expanding rapidly. What are the real on-ground challenges, according to you? Supply chain, when it comes to wafer, scale of investment, or the global price war with China?
Many challenges, right? So for a lot of manufacturers in India, I think it's scaling pretty quickly right now, but we're also seeing a lot of new manufacturers come because they see an opportunity, all right? So we've seen companies with 300, 500 megawatt manufacturing lines. How are they going to, survive and compete with another company that has a 5 gigawatt line or a 10 gigawatt line, right? So I think in a year or two, we might see some consolidation happen, a little shakeout when some of these smaller, kind of weaker manufacturers might not be around, right? But that's not a bad thing. Other than that, most of our Indian manufacturers need to specialize a little bit, right? We're getting into the business because, there's an opportunity. What is your expertise? What is your background in manufacturing, right? All that is going to help certain manufacturers get stronger, while others are probably not going to make it. So that's something that this market has not seen, and I'm not sure how they will handle it. I've seen that a little bit in China. In US, we lost most of the manufacturing about 10, 12 years ago to China because of the price war or whatnot, right? Price right now, is that such a big issue? Probably not, only because now we've really ring-fenced, the solar industry from imports. So we are not importing much, so we're not competing with China much, right? So that's less of an issue. And hopefully, while these manufacturers, at least some of them, if they can get to 5, 10, 15, 20 gigawatt scale, you're going to see that prices coming down. So eventually, maybe there are fewer very large manufacturers come in to the top, and who that is going to depend on how good their product is, quality and service. And rest of them are going to struggle a little bit, and that's just the way the market works.
And also looking at the key policies like PLI and the green hydrogen mission, what has worked and what needs course correction according to you?
Yeah. PLI, we still have to see what the results are, right? Right now we have obviously model manufacturing capacity, cell, not so much, but not much in terms of wafer and polysilicon. So I still want to see how that all works right now, but it's a good start over there. Green hydrogen, there's one thing right now, every country wants to jump in on the bandwagon as soon as they hear some new technology coming out there, right? Green hydrogen became a big deal a couple of years ago, and everybody started announcing projects, and we're going to be the next big Europe's going to be the next big hub. Africa is, Asia, India, US, so on and so forth. Green hydrogen, to be commercially viable, the cost has to come down. We're not there yet. We're not even close. We're talking 8 to 10 years. So until then, a lot of it is noise. There's something on paper. If anything, I'd like to see a mission on energy storage. I don't think we have one so far. That's more important and critical right now and needs that support. And hydrogen is something I think in the future, and a lot of it is mostly marketing at this point from companies, making sure they're not missing out, right? So, I mean, having policies is okay, but I think focus on what is critical, like energy storage right now, instead of just jumping on to the next big thing out there.
So beyond modules, when you look at assessing the progress of critical components like inverters, trackers, the balance of system elements in India, and which areas and what do you think are the areas where that still rely heavily on imports and need a very targeted policy support?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're always focused on modules and cells, right? Yeah. So there is a lot of other components that go into a solar system, right? So right now, imports are not restricted in those areas because we also need to have supply here, all right? So which is a good policy. Just let's make sure we have enough, domestic supply here before we can shut down those markets. I think the government should look into it look beyond modules and cells and wafers and polysilicon into all these other components. Inverter manufacturing is already happening in India. Actually, a lot of Chinese companies assemble their inverters here. The parts come from China, but they have a base here, and they actually even export out of here, right? And I'm seeing, especially after PM Suryagarh launching, a lot of inverter manufacturers in India taking off right now, right? They need some support. I'm not saying, create a policy for every single component. If there is enough demand, I think these companies are going to come up and meet that demand. So continue supporting them. Look beyond your basic cells and models, also towards the complete value chain, is what I suggest.
Perfect. And looking 5 years ahead, what milestones or shifts would make you feel that India and global solar sector has really taken off?
Yeah. I think in the next 5 years, if India can install somewhere in the 40 to 50 gigawatt range, I would say more so 50 gigawatt range, we've really arrived, right? And we've really arrived. It's going to create a nice big market. That would tell me that this market is big, mature, taking off, world leader to a certain extent. Globally, it depends on each countries and their own policies. Not a lot of countries, believe it or not, have targets. US does not have a target. They just have policies supporting renewables, but they don't really have a target, right? So, continued momentum, set good goals, really strive to meet them. It shouldn't be an election slogan, right? Instead, you know what I'm saying? It should be something that we really set a target and build the policies to meet that target, right? Which India, I think, is doing right now.
And if you could advise the policymakers on that one thing, what would that one single intervention be that you believe could create the fastest acceleration in solar deployment?
Okay. Besides all the financial incentives and policies, I'll pick something that we don't talk enough. We need skilled manpower. So I was talking about, about it in a panel. If you ask me a question about my own company, I think we can grow at least 20% faster, at least. The number could be higher if I had skilled manpower available, right? So I can only imagine how big of a problem this is for manufacturing, right? You need engineers and whatnot, especially if you're doing R&D. building projects. But on the flip side, this sector is a massive job creator. We're going to create so many jobs, right? So we have to take that as an opportunity and bridge that skill gap right now. I interview a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of other company CEOs do. There is no connection to what is being taught in our colleges and universities to what is happening on the ground. I am shocked, that they lack very basic knowledge and they have degrees in renewable energy. So we got to get our syllabuses connected to what is actually happening on the ground. And believe me, this is not all government. We all have to train our, workforce and together do something where private sector and public government is also helping. But I think that's one key area we don't want to forget while we're always constantly talking about incentives for manufacturing or project development or whatnot, right? We have to bring our skill levels up to be able to meet that demand and move forward.
And how do you see India's solar ecosystem, which includes developers, EPCs, manufacturers, financiers, collaborating to make that vision a reality?
Yeah, I think it's gotten better. We've been doing our annual summit here for 5th year right now, 4th year in person. And, I meet all the CEOs over here. I mean, compared to 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, they're talking to each other. They're working with each other. A lot more cooperation. When I see them all in one room, it makes me feel like, this thing is working, right? They're working with each other. The ecosystem is in place. There's cooperation happening. So I think Indian solar sector is in a very good place in that sense.
And when you talk about Bharat specifically, the Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, launched in February 2024,
Correct.
aims to empower close to about 1 crore households with rooftop solar. Now, how effective is the scheme so far, according to you? And what gaps remain in outreach, financing, and installation quality?
Okay. Very good program. If anything, right now, the challenge is it's a little too successful, because it just quickly took off. I don't think the government expected this kind of demand this quickly, right? Which is a good challenge to have. So what is the result of it? Certain states have struggled. Infrastructure. My news team covers this very closely. Initially, the software glitches, they couldn't get on the portal and all that. Subsidies were delayed. They have ironed it out, as we've gone, right? They're getting better and better. Government is fixing problems as they come. But how do you meet this demand? So we need a lot of installers. And there are a lot of, mom and pops, electrical store owners, and everybody else is now an installer, right? Which means they've not done this before. And that means the quality is poor. Quality is a big issue. And we hear from it constantly. Service after sales service is an issue. So we need a little bit of control on that side to make sure, we don't want to make a mistake of this going on too long, because if customers experience bad service, bad quality, they're going to pull back from solar. We don't want the whole industry suffering from bad reputation because of a few players that are doing this, right? So I think the government should quickly fix that and make sure these companies are accredited. I don't want the government to create another layer of bureaucracy, but let's just make sure they're qualified to meet this demand and can install a quality solar system and make sure that homeowner is happy and their service after that. So not a huge problem, but nonetheless something that needs to get fixed for this program to continue to be successful.
Sure. And as India's installed capacity grows, end-of-life module management becomes extremely critical. Now, what framework, which includes policies, regulations, or SOPs, should India adopt to enable effective recycling and clarity in solar components?
Yeah. We've not paid much attention to this because the sector is very new, right? But I was talking to a few people downstairs who are already saying, there's a lot of models 8 years or older that are already degrading fast. What do we do with them? I think there needs to be a framework around it. I don't think there's very clear policy as to what needs to happen after that. Because once these models start degrading and they're getting old and you have to recycle, they're going to come in large numbers. So we need to have a proper policy in place so that the industry understands how they recycle, what they need to do. That structure is not very clear right now. I think that needs to be made clear to the industry. With all the challenges we have, this seems like a small problem, but it can get bigger faster if we don't address it. So hopefully the government will address it at some point.
And a couple of questions now on Satwick specifically.
Yeah.
You've had, of course, Mercom and Satwick have been together and been absolutely thick partners for a fairly long time.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about Satwick as a partner and your own association, as well as Mercom's association with Satwick?
Right.
What do you think are the key strengths, as well as the key qualities or attributes that keep Satwick and Mercom bonded together?
Yeah. Satwick is a good company. I consider your CEO, Prashant Mathur, a friend. He's been around in the industry a long time, knowledgeable person. You have a good reputation in the market. I'm not saying that because I'm on your podcast. This is feedback coming to us from others. You're considered one of the tier 1 manufacturers in India. So my advice is don't rest on those laurels, right? Continue getting better and continue expanding beyond models. I think Satwick is getting into cells right now. Look into getting deeper into that market, but don't rush. Be methodical, and then build some technology aspects to Satwick. Right? It's not just you're making models or cells. Invest in R&D. Be known as technologically forward company.
Thank you so much, Raj, for joining us here on this podcast. It was really a pleasure talking to you and listening into you. I hope our viewers also enjoyed this conversation as much as we did here. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you.